Excellent. So welcome to our live wire called the Wisdom Template. We're going to look at wisdom. We're going to look at where wisdom comes from and how we grow in wisdom, how we know if we're wise or not wise. And we're going to have a template that we can use to make great, intelligent decisions anytime, anywhere. So what's the difference between wisdom and knowledge? That's one of the things we're going to look at today in this first session. And what is the process of wisdom as well? Obviously, I'm an old man now, and like most old men, I often think, I wish I knew when I was younger what I know now. Particularly because most of the big decisions we make in our life that shape the rest of our lives are made when we're young, when probably we have less wisdom. And so I know a lot of people who live with regrets, and that's a shame. Apparently, we're going to make something like 773,000 decisions in our lives. According to some recent surveys, surprisingly, we regret a lot of them. In fact, if you do the math, we're going to regret, apparently, something like 18.5% of the decisions we make. Now, personally, I would say that's different. I personally don't think I regret anything like that. Maybe 1 or 2 or 3%. I don't know about you. So making wise decisions, particularly ones that shape the rest of our lives, or maybe the lives of our children or our spouse or those we love, is going to be really important. Perhaps the figure that surprised me the most, though, was this figure. People were asked, would you prefer other people to make your decisions for you? I don't know how many of you would agree with this, but apparently 55% said yes, I prefer other people to make my decisions for me. That surprises me. The thing is that wisdom is becoming more and more valuable as knowledge is becoming cheaper. Many, many years ago, it was hard to get knowledge. You would have to buy lots of books. You would have to maybe go to college to acquire knowledge. Now you don't have to. You can find knowledge at your fingertips on your phone. It's incredible. But wisdom, what to do with that knowledge, is becoming really valuable. In fact, even science is changing things. There's some crazy sci-fi facts out there. Apparently right now, they're actually working on a chip that can put into your brain one day where you won't need to learn French, you'll know French. So you're going to go on holiday to France and you'll be able to, it sounds ridiculous, but you'll be able to put something into your brain and you'll just know France. And the same with musical instruments. These are things that scientists are actually working on now. So knowledge is becoming cheaper, but wisdom is becoming more expensive. So what is wisdom? Let's look at that for a start. What is wisdom? Probably the obvious person to turn to will be Solomon. The Bible tells us this. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God said, ask for whatever you want me to give you. So let's imagine tonight God turns up in your dream and says the same thing to you. What would you ask for? Solomon assesses his situation, thinks, what do I really, really need? And then he gives this reply. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours? The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. So God said to him, since you have asked for this, and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor have you asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never be anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you've not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. So Solomon essentially seeks first the kingdom of God and gets all this other stuff afterwards. We're going to look at wisdom. We're going to look at 6 elements of wisdom. So how you can make intelligent choices. My aim as a leader is not that you need to come to me or someone like a pastor to ask for wisdom, but you have a template to make wise decisions anywhere, anytime, and for anything. So before we look at wisdom, let's look at foolishness first. Many years ago, I was serving with a church, and a young man at the time, had a real passion for something. He had a passion for health and safety. Not many people have a passion for health and safety, but he did. He'd gone and done a short course. He was really excited about health and safety. And he said to the leaders of the church, I think it's really important we make sure the church is safe. So I'd like to go around and maybe check areas and put a little bit of tape on areas that are a bit dangerous for kids, etc. So without question, the leaders said to him, okay, off you go. And we came in, and what we found was that the whole place was covered in caution tape. It was absolutely everywhere. The Sunday school teachers couldn't go into the Sunday school room because the whole room was covered. The worship band couldn't operate because even the drums had worship tape wrapped around the drums. There was a counseling room for the pastor. He couldn't go in because there was tape literally everywhere. We walked in and it was like, whoa, everything was yellow. It was crazy. Basically, he'd locked down the church and nobody could do anything. No matter what the Sunday school teachers wanted to do, no matter what the pastors wanted to do, no matter what the worship leaders wanted to do, nobody could do anything because he was given carte blanche to do whatever he wanted to do. And so we rectified it, we took all the tape down, maybe there were 2 places we left it that seemed reasonable. Now whose fault was that? It wasn't the health and safety officer because he did what he was supposed to do. It was a lack of leadership. Leadership is holding these things in balance. It's understanding the core mandate, the ultimate goal you're aiming for, and making sure all these other things fit and work towards that. And here's the problem. You're the leader of your own mind. And so you're going to have personality traits, you're going to have passions that are going to pull you in different directions. So how do we become wise so they don't pull us off track, but they help us reach the ultimate calling or ultimate goal or the mandate that God has given you? How do we do that? Well, there's a process in Jewish thinking. The word Chabad is the word for wisdom. But when I think about foolishness, I think about this. Foolishness is not the lack of wisdom, it's the imbalance of wisdom. It's allowing certain things to take over our mind, a bit like the health and safety officer did. In fact, I would say that wisdom is a gift. And what wisdom is really about is having that self-discipline in our minds. So for me, wisdom is a fruit of the Spirit. It's self-discipline, at least, is a fruit of the Spirit. I would say this, a fool does not lack wisdom, but self-discipline. They're allowing certain passions, certain personalities to pull them off track. If you see a fool or someone doing foolish things, absolutely give them advice, but pray that God gives them self-discipline. So what does the process of wisdom look like? Well, as I said before, the Jews had a word, or have a word for wisdom, and the word is Chabad. Now, Chabad's an interesting word because it's actually an acronym for 3 other words, Chokmah, Bina, and Dat. And these are the process of how you become wise. So Chokmah is to hear. It's insight. It's when you hear information. So right now, we're all hearing the same information. And that's the first step. Insight is the first step of gaining wisdom. But there's an element of being wise in that, because you can put yourself in a good place to get wisdom, or you can ignore wisdom and avoid it. And more than that, wisdom, like I say, is expensive. I went to a U2 concert many years ago at the AT&T Stadium just over the road from here. That stadium's awful for sound. It's a great sports stadium. It's terrible for concerts. And I was sat on the back row, finally got a ticket, and during the warm-up band, I'm thinking, this sounds terrible. So I'm going to try and, you know what I'm like, I'm going to try and get a better option. So I walked right down. I found a bar not far from the stage, and I'll be honest, I used my English accents to charm the lady there, and she let me in. And then there was a little balcony, and I was probably about 50 yards from the edge, or from Bono. I had like a $300-400 seat. It wasn't a seat, I was stood up. Massive difference. So I chose a position that was more expensive. You know this. If you go to church, if you're on the back row or the front row, it's a very different experience. On the front row, you feel like a participator. On the back row, you feel like a spectator. So it's about positioning ourselves. The first step of wisdom is, how do you position yourself to hear wisdom? But that's just the first step. The second step is bina. Bina means to discern or distinguish. It's where you hear wisdom and you think, this is God or this is not God. This is good or this is bad. So right now you will be discerning how helpful is this information. Is this good? Is it not good? Is it God? Is it not good? What's interesting is when Solomon asked for wisdom, he specifically asked for bina. He asked for the ability to distinguish between righteous and unrighteous in order to judge, which is really, really key and really, really important. I often tell the story of the lady with the issue of blood. She reached out to Jesus, do you remember? And she touched the tassels on his garment. There were many, many other people there, but she had bina. She realized, this is my opportunity. She decided, this is the Messiah. And so she took that verse, I think it's from Isaiah, that says the Messiah will have healing in his wings, which was referring to tassels on the garment. So she touched the tassels, knowing full well that if she got it wrong, she would make this rabbi impure and, take on the wrath of the crowd. But actually, she got it right, and God healed her. Why did God heal her? Because of her faith. How did she have faith? Because of wisdom. She had the bina to distinguish, this is the Messiah, this is God. And one of the reasons we miss God in our lives is not because we don't know what God looks like, but because we've decided in advance what God looks like. And we think, well, that's what God looks like. And when God does something different, we can't distinguish the difference between our imagination and what God actually does. The third stage of wisdom, where we actually become wise, is dat. And dat means to become. This is where we hear, this is where we distinguish, and this is where we take on board that wisdom or that advice or that thing we read or listen to or as we study in the Word of God, and we practice it on a regular basis, so much so that it becomes who we are. When I saw that thing, 773,000 decisions, I thought to myself, I did a little bit of math, I thought, I make a lot more decisions than that. I get people asking me for decisions all the time. Like every hour I must get emails and texts. Should we do this? Should we do that? Thinking of doing this. What do you think about this? Should I say that? I have to make decisions for myself. I have to make or help people make decisions for themselves. There's no way I could pray about all that. There's just no way. And prayer doesn't work like that. It's not like you have a question, you ask God, and there's a certain amount of time, 2 minutes, and he gives you the answer. It doesn't work like that, does it? So we have to have these principles where wisdom has become part of who we are. That's what wisdom looks like. So as you think about growing in wisdom, what's the area of wisdom or the area of the process that you need to think about most? Is it, I need to make sure I'm put in the right place? I need to make sure that I have the right attitude if I'm in that right place where I want to hear wisdom, even if it's not what I want to hear? Or is it bina? Do you need to ask God for bina? Well, I hear wisdom all the time. I hear advice. People are telling me this. People are telling me that. People have this opinion of what I should do. People have that opinion of what I should do. But I need the bina to know what's God and what's not. Or is it you hear a lot of wisdom, you're pretty good at figuring out what is God, but maybe you've not practiced it. Or maybe you need to practice it more. How would you do that? So let's collaborate. I want you to download the documents, discuss the questions, and then once you've done that, begin thinking about how we can disciple others in what we've just learned.
Hi, we hope that you enjoyed this episode of Livewire. If you're interested in learning more about this topic, I'd like to recommend mypais.com, where you can find more episodes on this subject.